The blood on her hands would not wash away, no matter how hard Tabitha Harlow scrubbed them in the cold creek water behind the saloon where she worked in Buffalo, Wyoming. It was 1878, and she had spent the last 3 years convincing herself that survival was enough, that happiness was a luxury meant for women who had not made the choices she had made, who had not done the things she had done to stay alive. The autumn air bit at her exposed skin as she knelt by the water, her worn cotton dress soaking through at the knees. The blood was not real anymore, had not been real for 2 years, but she still felt it there, sticky and damning. She had killed a man once, a customer who had tried to force himself on one of the younger girls at the saloon. The sheriff had called it self-defense, but Tabitha knew the truth. She had enjoyed watching the life drain from his eyes, had felt powerful for the first time since her father had sold her to pay his gambling debts when she was 16. Now, at 23, she worked serving drinks at the Silver Spur Saloon, keeping her head down and her heart locked away. The other women who worked there tried to befriend her, but Tabitha kept her distance. Friendship required trust, and trust required vulnerability, and she had learned long ago that vulnerability only led to pain. She did not notice the man watching her from the tree line until he spoke. "That water is going to freeze your hands clean off if you keep it much longer." Tabitha spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the small knife she kept hidden in her boot. The man standing at the edge of the clearing was unlike anyone she had ever seen in Buffalo. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the sun filtering through the pine trees. His hair, dark brown and slightly wavy, fell past his shoulders, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a startling shade of gray-blue that seemed to see straight through her careful defenses. He wore buckskin clothing that had clearly seen years of use, and a massive fur coat hung open despite the cold. Muscles strained against the fabric of his shirt, and Tabitha could see the strength in every movement as he took a step closer, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I did not mean to startle you," he said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through her chest. "I am Samuel Hawthorne. Most folks call me Sam. I am looking for the trading post." Tabitha slowly removed her hand from her boot, though she kept her body tense and ready to run. "You are going the wrong direction. Trading post is on the other side of town, near the main road." Samuel nodded, but he did not move to leave. Instead, his eyes traveled to her hands, still red from the cold water and her frantic scrubbing. "You are bleeding," he observed quietly. She looked down and realized he was right. She had scrubbed so hard that she had reopened old cuts on her knuckles. "It is nothing," she said quickly, pulling her hands behind her back. "I need to get back to work." "At the saloon?" Samuel asked, and there was no judgment in his voice, only curiosity. "Yes," she said defensively, lifting her chin. "Is that a problem?" He shook his head slowly. "No problem at all. I just wondered if they might have a room available. I am looking to stay in town for a while, maybe through the winter. I have been trapping up in the mountains and I have furs to trade." Tabitha studied him carefully. Mountain men occasionally came through Buffalo, but they rarely stayed long. They were wild creatures, more comfortable in the untamed wilderness than among civilized people. This man, this Samuel, seemed different somehow. There was a gentleness in his eyes that contradicted the raw power evident in his massive frame. "The saloon has rooms upstairs," she said finally, "but they are not cheap, and Mr. Patterson does not like to rent to trappers. He says they bring trouble." Samuel's lips quirked in what might have been a smile beneath his beard. "I promise I am not much trouble, but thank you for the warning. I will talk to Mr. Patterson and see what I can work out." He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at her. You should put something on those hands. Pine sap works well for cuts like that, keeps them from getting infected. Before Tabitha could respond, he was gone, melting into the forest as silently as he had appeared. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the place where he had been, feeling oddly unsettled. No one in Buffalo paid attention to her beyond what they wanted from her. No one noticed when she was hurt or troubled. But this stranger, this mountain man, had seen her pain in a matter of minutes. She shook her head, dismissing the strange encounter. She had learned not to trust kindness, especially from men. Kindness always came with a price. When Tabitha returned to the saloon, she found it in an uproar. Samuel Hawthorne had apparently made quite an impression on Mr. Patterson, the owner, who was practically dancing with excitement in the main room. "Tabitha," he called when he saw her, "get yourself cleaned up and put on your best dress. We have a very important guest staying with us for the winter." She frowned, glancing around the saloon. It was early afternoon and the usual crowd had not yet arrived. Only a few regulars sat at the tables, nursing their drinks. Samuel stood near the bar, looking distinctly uncomfortable as Mr. Patterson gestured wildly. "This here is Samuel Hawthorne," Mr. Patterson continued, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "He is a legend up in the mountains. Folks say he once fought off a grizzly bear with nothing but a hunting knife. Killed it too, and wore its skin for a week until he could properly tan the hide." Samuel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Tabitha realized he did not appreciate being made into a spectacle. "That is not exactly how it happened," he said quietly, but Mr. Patterson was not listening. "He has agreed to stay here through the winter and has paid for his room in advance with the finest furs I have ever seen. This is going to be good for business, very good indeed." Tabitha understood immediately. Mr. Patterson intended to use Samuel as an attraction, something to draw in customers who wanted to drink with a real mountain man and hear exaggerated tales of wilderness survival. She felt a surge of unexpected sympathy for the big man who looked like he wanted nothing more than to disappear. "Mr. Patterson," she said carefully, "perhaps Mr. Hawthorne would like to settle into his room before you start advertising his presence." The saloon owner blinked at her, clearly surprised that she had spoken up. Tabitha rarely offered opinions or suggestions. "I suppose you are right," he said reluctantly. "Tabitha, show Mr. Hawthorne to the corner room on the second floor. It is our best accommodation." Samuel grabbed a worn leather pack from the floor and followed Tabitha up the narrow staircase. She was acutely aware of his presence behind her, of the way his heavy footsteps made the wooden stairs creak. When they reached the second floor, she led him down the hallway to the last door on the right. "This is the room," she said, opening the door to reveal a modest but clean space with a bed, a washstand, a small table, and a chair. A window looked out over the main street of Buffalo. "It is the quietest room we have. The noise from downstairs does not carry as much up here." Samuel stepped into the room and set his pack down on the bed. He looked around slowly, and Tabitha had the distinct impression that he was measuring the space, calculating exits and potential dangers. It was the behavior of a man who had spent his life staying alive in hostile territory. "Thank you," he said, turning to face her. Up close, in the better light of the room, she could see the scars that marked his hands and forearms. He had lived a hard life, that much was clear. "And thank you for trying to intervene downstairs. I appreciate the effort." Tabitha shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. "Mr. Patterson can be overwhelming. I thought you might want some peace." "I do," Samuel agreed. "But I suspect peace is going to be hard to come by if he plans to turn me into some kind of sideshow attraction." "You could leave," Tabitha pointed out. "There are other places to stay in Buffalo." "I could," Samuel said slowly, his gray-blue eyes studying her face with unnerving intensity. "But I think I will stay here, at least for now." Tabitha felt her cheeks flush under his gaze, and she looked away quickly. "Supper is served downstairs at 6 o'clock. If you need anything, you can find me in the main room most evenings." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Tabitha." She froze, her hand on the door frame. "Yes, that is your name, is it not? I heard Mr. Patterson call you that." "Yes," she said quietly. "It is a good name, strong." She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing at all. She simply walked out of the room and closed the door behind her, her heart beating faster than it should have been. No one had ever told her that her name was strong. Most people in Buffalo barely used her name at all, preferring to call her girl or you there when they wanted something. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of routine tasks. Tabitha wiped down tables, refilled oil lamps, and prepared the saloon for the evening crowd. She tried not to think about Samuel Hawthorne, but she found her eyes drifting to the staircase more often than usual, wondering what he was doing in that quiet room. When 6 o'clock arrived, the saloon was already filling with customers. Word had spread quickly about the mountain man, and it seemed like half the town had decided to come see him for themselves. Tabitha moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, delivering drinks and dodging wandering hands with the ease of long experience. Samuel came downstairs just after 6, and the noise level in the saloon immediately increased. Men called out to him, wanting to buy him drinks and hear his stories. To his credit, Samuel remained polite but distant, accepting a plate of food and a mug of beer before retreating to a table in the corner. Tabitha watched as various people approached him throughout the evening, and she noticed that he had a talent for deflecting questions without being rude. He would answer vaguely, then turn the conversation back to the other person, asking about their work or their families. It was a clever strategy, and it seemed to work. People left his table feeling like they had made a connection with the mysterious mountain man, even though he had revealed almost nothing about himself. It was nearly midnight when a drunk cowboy named Jake Mercer decided he did not like being ignored. Tabitha was clearing glasses from a nearby table when she heard his voice rise above the general noise of the saloon. "You think you are better than us?" Jake slurred, swaying as he leaned over Samuel's table. "Just because you live up in the mountains like some kind of wild animal." "You are nothing special, Hawthorne." Samuel looked up from his drink, his expression calm but wary. "I do not think I am better than anyone. I am just here to have a quiet meal." "Quiet meal," Jake repeated mockingly. "You hear that, boys? The big mountain man wants a quiet meal." Maybe he is scared. Maybe all those stories about him are lies. Tabitha saw the tension ripple through Samuel's shoulders, saw the way his hands tightened on his mug. She knew what was about to happen. Jake Mercer was a bully who picked fights whenever he had too much to drink, and Mr. Patterson was too afraid of his father, one of the wealthiest ranchers in the area, to ban him from the saloon. Before Samuel could respond, Tabitha stepped forward and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "Jake, why do not you come sit down over here? I will bring you some coffee on the house." Jake shook off her hand roughly, nearly knocking her off balance. "Stay out of this, Tabitha. This does not concern you." Samuel was on his feet before Tabitha even registered the movement. One moment he was sitting calmly at his table, and the next he was standing between her and Jake, his massive frame radiating barely controlled power. "You do not touch her," Samuel said, his voice low and dangerous. "Ever." Jake's drunken bravado faltered in the face of Samuel's cold fury. Up close, the size difference between the two men was even more apparent. Jake was average height and build, while Samuel looked like he could snap him in half without breaking a sweat. "I did not mean nothing by it," Jake muttered, taking a step back. "She is just a saloon girl." "She is a person," Samuel corrected him, each word precise and sharp. "And you will treat her with respect. Now I suggest you go home and sleep off whatever poison you have been drinking." For a moment, Tabitha thought Jake might be stupid enough to throw a punch. But then Mr. Patterson appeared, wringing his hands nervously. "Jake, perhaps it would be best if you left for the evening. You can come back tomorrow when you are feeling better." Jake glared at Samuel for a long moment, then spat on the floor and staggered toward the door. "This is not over, Hawthorne," he called back. "Nobody talks to me like that." When the door slammed behind Jake, the saloon gradually returned to its normal volume. Samuel remained standing, watching the door as if expecting Jake to return. Tabitha touched his arm lightly, feeling the rock-hard muscle beneath his shirt. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but you did not have to do that. I am used to men like Jake." Samuel turned to look at her, and the anger in his eyes had been replaced by something else, something that looked almost like pain. "Maybe you should not have to be used to it," he said. "Maybe nobody should." He returned to his table without another word, and Tabitha stood there feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever suggested that the way she was treated was wrong. She had spent so long accepting her lot in life that she had forgotten it could be any different. The rest of the evening passed without incident, but Tabitha found herself constantly aware of Samuel's presence in the corner. She noticed the way other customers gave him a wide berth after the confrontation with Jake, the way conversations quieted when he walked past. He had made himself an outsider by defending her, and part of her felt guilty about that. When the saloon finally closed for the night and the last drunk had been escorted out the door, Tabitha began the process of cleaning up. She swept the floor, wiped down the tables, and collected the dirty glasses. Samuel had retreated to his room hours ago, but she could see light beneath his door when she carried a bucket of dirty water upstairs to dump out the window at the end of the hall. She was on her way back down when his door opened. He stood in the doorway, still fully dressed, his hair loose around his shoulders. "You should not have to clean this place alone," he said. "It is late." Tabitha shrugged. "It is part of my job. Mr. Patterson does not pay anyone to help with the cleaning." Samuel frowned at that but did not comment. Instead, he said, "I wanted to apologize if I caused you any trouble tonight. I know I should have ignored Jake's taunts, but when he pushed you, I could not just sit there." "You did not cause me trouble," Tabitha assured him. "Jake causes his own trouble. He will have forgotten about it by tomorrow." "Maybe," Samuel said, though he sounded doubtful. "But men like that do not like to be embarrassed in public. You should be careful around him." "I am always careful," Tabitha said. It was the truth. She had spent years being careful, watching for danger, preparing for the worst. "But I appreciate your concern." Samuel studied her for a long moment, and Tabitha had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see past all her careful walls, that he understood things about her that she had never spoken aloud. "Why do you work here?" he asked suddenly. "A woman like you could do better than serving drinks to drunks and fools." Tabitha felt a spark of anger flare in her chest. "A woman like me," she repeated, her voice sharp. "What exactly do you think you know about me, Mr. Hawthorne? We met this afternoon." "You do not know anything about what I could or could not do, about what choices I have or do not have." To her surprise, Samuel did not get defensive. Instead, he simply nodded. "You are right. I apologize. That was presumptuous of me." The anger drained out of Tabitha as quickly as it had appeared, leaving her feeling tired and hollow. "I work here because I have nowhere else to go," she said quietly. Because Mr. Patterson pays me enough to rent a room and buy food, and because the alternative is starving or selling myself, and I have managed to avoid that so far. Is that a good enough answer for you? Yes, Samuel said simply. Thank you for your honesty. Tabitha did not know what to make of him. In her experience, men who asked personal questions were looking for weaknesses to exploit. But Samuel seemed genuinely interested in understanding her, not in using her answers against her. Why are you really here? She asked, turning the question back on him. Mountain men do not usually stay in town through the winter. They have cabins up in the high country, places where they can weather the storms and wait for spring. Samuel's expression grew distant, and for a moment Tabitha thought he would not answer. Then he said, My cabin burned down last month. Lightning struck during a storm. I lost everything except what I was carrying at the time. I could rebuild, but winter is coming fast and I would not finish before the first snow. So I decided to come to Buffalo, sell my furs and earn enough money to buy supplies and start fresh in the spring. I am sorry, Tabitha said, and she meant it. She knew what it was like to lose everything, to have to start over with nothing. It is just things, Samuel said with a shrug of his massive shoulders. I am alive, and that is what matters. Besides, maybe it was time for a change. I have been alone up there for 5 years. Maybe it is time to remember how to be around people again. Why did you go up there in the first place? Tabitha asked, then immediately regretted the question. I am sorry. That is too personal. You do not have to answer. It is all right, Samuel said. I went up there because I was angry at the world and angry at myself. I had served in the army, fought in the Indian Wars, and seen things that no person should ever have to see. When I was discharged, I could not stand being around people anymore. All the noise and the crowds and the constant demands. So I packed up my gear and headed into the mountains. I thought I would stay for a few months, clear my head. But months turned into years, and I just kept staying. Tabitha understood that kind of isolation more than he probably realized. She might be surrounded by people every day, but she was just as alone as he had been in his mountain cabin. Maybe more so because at least he had chosen his solitude. You regret it? She asked. Samuel considered the question carefully. No, he said finally. I needed that time. I needed to learn how to live with myself again, with the things I had done and seen. But I think I am ready to come back now. Ready to try anyway. They stood in the dim hallway, the only sound the distant creaking of the building settling for the night. Tabitha knew she should finish her cleaning and go to bed. She had to be up early to help prepare breakfast. But she found herself reluctant to walk away from this strange, honest conversation with a man who actually seemed to see her as a human being rather than just a means to an end. I should let you sleep, Samuel said, breaking the silence. You have been working all day and I am keeping you from your rest. I do not mind, Tabitha admitted, then immediately felt foolish. She sounded like a lonely child desperate for attention. But Samuel just smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger and less severe. I do not mind either, but I suspect we will both regret it in the morning if we do not get some sleep. Good night, Tabitha. Good night, Mr. Hawthorne. Sam, he corrected gently. Please call me Sam. Tabitha nodded, and Sam returned to his room, closing the door softly behind him. She stood there for a moment longer, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. It took her a while to identify the feeling. Hope. She felt hope for the first time in years, and it terrified her. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Sam would come downstairs each morning for breakfast, then spend his days either helping with repairs around the saloon or wandering around Buffalo, getting to know the town and its people. He had a natural way with folks, despite his claims of being rusty at socializing. People were drawn to his quiet strength and his genuine interest in their lives. Tabitha watched him carefully, waiting for the mask to slip, for him to reveal whatever ulterior motive was driving his kindness. But as days turned into weeks, Sam remained exactly what he appeared to be, a decent man trying to find his place in the world again. He fell into the habit of staying up late at the saloon, long after the other customers had left. He would sit at his corner table while Tabitha cleaned, and they would talk. At first, the conversations were superficial, trading stories about the weather or funny things that had happened during the day. But gradually, they began to open up to each other. Sam told her about growing up in Ohio, the second son of a farmer who had barely been able to feed his family. He told her about joining the army at 18, desperate to escape the grinding poverty of farm life. He told her about the friends he had made and lost, about the battles that still haunted his dreams. In return, Tabitha found herself sharing pieces of her own history that she had never told anyone. She told him about her mother, who had died when Tabitha was 10, leaving her at the mercy of a father who cared more about whiskey and cards than his own daughter. She told him about being sold at 16, about the brothel where she had spent 2 years before finally escaping to Buffalo. She did not tell him about the man she had killed. That secret remained locked away, too dark and too dangerous to share. One cold November evening, nearly a month after Sam's arrival, Jake Mercer returned to the saloon. He had been absent since the confrontation, and Tabitha had hoped he would stay away. But there he was, walking through the door with a group of his friends, all of them already drunk from wherever they had been before. Tabitha immediately tensed, and Sam, who was sitting at his usual table, noticed her reaction. He turned to see what had caused it, and his jaw tightened when he saw Jake. "Relax," Tabitha murmured as she passed Sam's table with a tray of drinks. "He is just here to cause trouble. Do not give him what he wants." But Jake had other ideas. He walked straight to Sam's table and slammed his hand down on the surface, making the glasses jump. "I have been thinking about you, Hawthorne, thinking about how you disrespected me in front of everyone." Sam looked up calmly, though Tabitha could see the tension in his shoulders. "I do not want trouble, Jake. Why do not you and your friends find another table?" "I do not think so," Jake said, his words slurring slightly. "I think you owe me an apology. You made me look like a fool." "You did that yourself," Sam said quietly. "I just stopped you from putting your hands on a woman who did not want to be touched. There is no apology needed for that." Jake's face flushed red with anger. "You think you are so much better than everyone else, do not you? Just because you are big and strong and you lived up in the mountains like some kind of savage. Well, I am not afraid of you." He reached for the gun at his hip, and everything seemed to happen at once. Sam surged to his feet, moving with shocking speed for such a large man. He grabbed Jake's wrist before the gun could clear the holster, twisting it sharply. Jake cried out in pain and the gun clattered to the floor. Sam spun Jake around and shoved him face first against the table, one massive hand pinning him in place. "You do not pull a gun on someone over words," Sam said, his voice hard and cold. "That is a good way to get yourself killed. Now I am going to let you go, and you are going to walk out of here with your friends. And if I ever see you threaten someone with a weapon again, I will not be so gentle. Do you understand me?" Jake nodded frantically, his face pressed against the wooden table. Sam released him and stepped back, picking up Jake's gun and removing the bullets before handing it back. "Get out," Sam said simply. Jake and his friends practically ran for the door, stumbling over each other in their haste to escape. The other customers in the saloon, who had gone silent during the confrontation, slowly resumed their conversations, though the atmosphere remained tense. Mr. Patterson appeared from the back room, his face pale. "I do not want violence in my establishment," he said nervously, though it was clear he was more concerned about losing Jake's father's business than about what had actually happened. "There was no violence," Sam said calmly. "Just a misunderstanding that has been resolved. If Jake comes back, I suggest you serve him coffee instead of whiskey." He returned to his table as if nothing had happened, though Tabitha could see his hands shaking slightly. She brought him a fresh drink and sat down across from him without asking permission. "You could have killed him," she said quietly. "You are fast enough and strong enough. Why did you let him go?" Sam looked at her, and the haunted expression in his eyes made her heart ache. "Because I have killed enough men to last a lifetime," he said. "I do not want to add to that number unless I absolutely have to. Jake is an idiot and a bully, but he does not deserve to die for it." Tabitha reached across the table and placed her hand over his. His skin was warm and rough with calluses, and she felt his fingers curl around hers, holding on like she was an anchor in a storm. "Thank you," she said. "Again. You keep protecting me, and I do not know why." Sam's eyes locked with hers, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. "Because someone should," he said simply. "Because you deserve to be protected and cared for, even if you do not believe that yourself." The words hit her like a physical blow. Tabitha pulled her hand back and stood up abruptly, her heart pounding. "You do not know what I deserve," she said, her voice shaking. "You do not know what I have done." She fled before he could respond, retreating to the back room where Mr. Patterson stored supplies. She pressed her back against the wall and tried to calm her breathing, tried to push down the emotions that Sam's words had stirred up. She did not deserve protection or care. She did not deserve happiness. She was a murderer, a woman with blood on her hands and darkness in her soul. Sam was wrong about her. He had to be wrong, because if he was right, if she did deserve those things, then she had wasted years of her life believing the lies her father and the world had told her. She stayed in the back room until she was sure Sam had gone upstairs for the night, then finished her cleaning in a daze. When she finally made it to her own small room on the third floor, she lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the mountain man who seemed determined to see good in her that she was certain did not exist. The next morning, Tabitha avoided Sam at breakfast. She kept herself busy in the kitchen, helping the cook prepare meals for the handful of guests staying at the saloon. But Sam was nothing if not patient. He waited until the breakfast rush was over, then found her in the small garden behind the building where she sometimes went for fresh air. "I am sorry if I upset you last night," he said without preamble. "That was not my intention." Tabitha kept her back to him, focusing on the withered remains of the vegetable plants that had provided fresh food during the summer months. "You did not upset me. You just said something that was not true." "What did I say that was not true?" Sam asked, and she heard him move closer. "That I deserve to be protected and cared for, that I deserve happiness." She finally turned to face him, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. "You do not know me, Sam. You do not know the things I have done." "Then tell me," he said, his gray-blue eyes calm and steady. "Tell me what you think is so terrible that it means you do not deserve basic human kindness." Tabitha laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. "You want to know? Fine. I killed a man 2 years ago. I stabbed him in the throat with a knife and watched him bleed out on the floor of a brothel. The sheriff said it was self-defense, that I was protecting another girl. And maybe that was true. But I liked it, Sam. I liked watching him die. I felt powerful for the first time in my life. What kind of person feels that way? What kind of person enjoys killing?" She waited for him to recoil, to look at her with disgust or fear. But Sam just nodded slowly, as if she had confirmed something he already suspected. "The kind of person who has been powerless for too long," he said quietly. "The kind of person who has been hurt and used and made to feel worthless. I have killed men in battle, Tabitha. I have killed more men than I can count. And yes, sometimes there was satisfaction in it, especially when I was protecting my fellow soldiers or stopping someone who was trying to hurt the innocent. That does not make either of us monsters. It makes us human." "You killed in war," Tabitha protested. "That is different, is it?" Sam challenged. "I took lives because I was told to, because some general decided those men were the enemy. You took a life because someone was hurting people who could not defend themselves. If anything, your reason was more justified than mine." Tabitha shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "You are trying to make excuses for me. You are trying to make what I did sound noble when it was not. I am not a good person, Sam. I am broken and damaged, and I do not deserve your kindness or your friendship or whatever it is you are trying to give me." Sam closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and cupped her face in his large hands. His touch was surprisingly gentle for someone so strong. "You listen to me, Tabitha Harlow," he said, his voice fierce and passionate. "You are not broken. You have been hurt, yes. You have been treated terribly by people who should have protected you. But you survived. You kept going when it would have been easier to give up. You work hard every day. You are kind to the other women at the saloon. You try to keep the peace when men like Jake start trouble. Those are not the actions of a bad person. Those are the actions of someone who is doing her best in a world that has not been fair to her." The tears finally spilled over, running down her cheeks. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "Why does it matter to you what I think of myself?" Sam's thumbs gently wiped away her tears. "Because I know what it is like to believe you do not deserve happiness. I spent 5 years alone on a mountain, punishing myself for things I could not change, and I do not want that for you. You deserve so much more than what life has given you so far, and if I have to spend every day proving that to you, then that is what I will do." Tabitha wanted to argue, wanted to push him away and retreat behind her walls. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of carrying her guilt and shame by herself. So instead, she let herself lean into Sam's solid warmth, let him pull her into an embrace that felt safer than anything she had experienced in years. They stood there in the cold garden for a long time, holding each other while the late autumn wind rustled through the bare branches of the trees. And for the first time since she was a child, Tabitha let herself imagine that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. After that day in the garden, something shifted between Tabitha and Sam. She stopped avoiding him, stopped trying to maintain her careful distance. They spent their evenings talking, sharing meals at his corner table while the saloon bustled around them. Sam told her stories about his life in the mountains, about the animals he had encountered and the breathtaking beauty of the wilderness in every season. In return, Tabitha talked about her dreams, the small hopes she had kept locked away for years. She wanted to learn to read better, to understand the books she sometimes saw in the general store window. She wanted to have a garden of her own someday, a place where she could grow vegetables and flowers. She wanted to wake up in the morning without feeling afraid of what the day might bring. Sam listened to every word like it was precious, and he did not just listen. He acted. He bought her a book from the general store, a collection of poems, and spent patient hours helping her work through the more difficult words. He talked to Mr. Patterson about letting Tabitha have a small plot in the garden come spring so she could plant whatever she wanted. And every day, through his presence and his gentle kindness, he showed her that the world did not have to be a frightening place. December arrived with heavy snowstorms that blanketed Buffalo in white. The roads in and out of town became nearly impassable, and the population of the saloon swelled as travelers found themselves stranded. Sam helped Mr. Patterson keep the fireplaces burning and the walkways clear, his massive strength making quick work of tasks that would have taken other men hours. Tabitha watched him chop wood one morning, mesmerized by the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt, by the easy efficiency of his movements. She had never thought much about physical attraction before. In her experience, desire was something men felt and women endured. But watching Sam work, seeing the strength and care he brought to even simple tasks, she felt a warmth low in her belly that had nothing to do with the nearby fire. As if sensing her gaze, Sam looked up and smiled at her through the window. It was a smile full of warmth and affection, and it made her heart race in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. That evening, after the saloon had closed and the other guests had retreated to their rooms, Tabitha and Sam sat together at his table, a single oil lamp casting flickering shadows on the walls. They had been discussing the book of poems Sam had bought her, debating the meaning behind some of the more obscure verses. "I think the poet is talking about loneliness," Tabitha said, pointing to a particular stanza, "about feeling isolated even when surrounded by people." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "I can understand that. I felt more alone in the army, surrounded by hundreds of men, than I ever did by myself on the mountain." "Why is that?" Tabitha asked. "How can you be lonelier with people than without them?" "Because true loneliness is not about being physically alone," Sam explained. "It is about not having anyone who really sees you, who understands what you are feeling and thinking. You can be in a crowded room and still feel completely isolated if no one there knows the real you." Tabitha thought about that, thought about all the years she had spent serving drinks and dodging groping hands while her real self remained hidden away where no one could hurt her. "I have been lonely my entire life," she admitted quietly, "even before my mother died. My father never saw me as a person, just as a burden, and after he sold me, I learned to make sure no one could see the real me. It was safer that way." "And now," Sam asked, reaching across the table to take her hand, "do you still feel that way?" Tabitha looked at their joined hands, at the way his large, scarred fingers intertwined with hers so carefully, as if she were something precious. "No," she said honestly. "Not when I am with you. You see me, Sam, the real me with all my flaws and fears and broken pieces, and you do not turn away." "I will never turn away," Sam said, and there was a promise in his voice that made her chest tight. "You are not broken, Tabitha, but even if you were, I would still want to know you, to be near you. You are the strongest, bravest person I have ever met." "I am not brave," Tabitha protested. "You are," Sam insisted. "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is continuing to live and hope and try even when you are terrified. You do that every single day." Tabitha felt tears prickling at her eyes again. She seemed to cry more often these days, but they were different tears than before. These were tears of release, of slowly letting go of the armor she had worn for so long. "Sam," she said hesitantly, "what is happening between us? What is this?" He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. "I think you know what this is," he said finally. "At least, I know what it is for me. I have fallen in love with you, Tabitha. I think I started falling that first day by the creek, when I saw you trying so hard to wash away pain that only existed in your mind. I have been falling ever since." The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and wonderful. Tabitha's first instinct was to deny them, to protect herself by pushing him away. But she was tired of protecting herself at the cost of any chance at happiness. "I love you too," she whispered, and saying the words felt like stepping off a cliff, exhilarating and frightening all at once. "I did not want to. I tried not to. But I love you, Sam Hawthorne. I love your strength and your gentleness, and the way you make me believe that I might actually deserve good things." Sam stood up from his chair and moved around the table, kneeling beside her so they were at eye level. "You do deserve good things," he said firmly. "You deserve everything good this world has to offer, and I want to spend my life trying to give you those things if you will let me." "What are you saying?" Tabitha asked, though her heart was pounding so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. "I am saying that when spring comes and I rebuild my cabin, I want you to come with me. I want to marry you, Tabitha. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to protect you and cherish you and spend every day proving that you deserve all the happiness in the world." Tabitha could barely breathe. Marriage. A life with Sam, away from the saloon and the drunks and the constant fear. It sounded like a dream, like something too good to be true. "I have nothing to bring to a marriage," she said, voicing her deepest fear. "No money, no skills beyond serving drinks and scrubbing floors. Why would you want to tie yourself to someone like me?" Sam cupped her face in his hands, the same way he had in the garden. "You have everything that matters. You have courage and resilience and a good heart. You are kind and caring, even after everything you have been through. That is worth more than any money or material possessions. And as for skills, you can learn anything you want to learn. I will teach you how to hunt and trap, how to survive in the wilderness. We will figure everything out together." "I am afraid," Tabitha admitted. "I am afraid that this is a dream and I will wake up and you will be gone." "I am not going anywhere," Sam promised. "I am here, and I am real, and I love you. You do not have to be afraid anymore." Tabitha searched his face, looking for any sign of deception or ulterior motive, but all she saw was honesty and love and a determination that took her breath away. Sam meant every word he said. He really did love her, really did want to spend his life with her. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I will marry you. I will come with you in the spring. I will build a life with you." The smile that spread across Sam's face was radiant, transforming him from intimidating to beautiful. He pulled her out of her chair and into his arms, lifting her off her feet as he kissed her for the first time. It was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses Tabitha had experienced before. Sam's kiss was gentle but passionate, a question rather than a demand. He held her like she was precious, like she might break if he was too forceful. And when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tabitha felt like something fundamental had changed inside her. For the first time in her life, she believed that she might actually deserve to be happy. And it was all because of the mountain man who had seen past her walls and decided she was worth fighting for. They told Mr. Patterson about their engagement the next morning. The saloon owner was disappointed to be losing Tabitha's labor, but he congratulated them politely enough. Word spread quickly through Buffalo, as news always did in small towns, and reactions were mixed. Some people were happy for them, particularly the other women who worked at the saloon. They had seen how Sam treated Tabitha, had witnessed the way he looked at her like she hung the moon, and they were genuinely pleased that one of their own might have found happiness. Others were less enthusiastic. The more proper ladies of Buffalo whispered about how inappropriate it was for a mountain man to marry a saloon girl, as if either Sam or Tabitha cared about their approval. And then there were people like Jake Mercer, who saw the engagement as a personal insult. He cornered Tabitha one afternoon in late December while she was walking back from the general store. It was snowing lightly, and the streets were mostly empty. Sam had gone to meet with a local carpenter about purchasing tools for rebuilding his cabin, so Tabitha was alone. "I hear congratulations are in order," Jake said, stepping out from behind a building to block her path. His tone was mocking, and he had clearly been drinking despite the early hour. "Thank you," Tabitha said carefully, trying to step around him, but Jake moved to block her again. "What does Hawthorne see in you?" Jake asked, his words slurring slightly. "You are nothing special, just another whore who got lucky." Tabitha felt anger flare hot in her chest. She was so tired of men like Jake, men who thought they had the right to judge her, to reduce her to the worst thing that had ever happened to her. "I am not a whore," she said coldly. "I have never been a whore. I work hard for my living, and I do not owe you or anyone else an explanation for my life choices." "Fancy words," Jake sneered, "but we all know what you are. And when Hawthorne gets tired of you, you will be right back in the saloon, serving drinks and spreading your legs for whoever has the money." Something inside Tabitha snapped. She was done being afraid, done letting men like Jake make her feel small and worthless. She stepped forward, getting right in Jake's face despite the fact that he was several inches taller. "You are a sad, pathetic little man who picks on women because you are too weak to face someone your own size. Sam was right about you. You are a bully and a coward. And when he hears how you talk to me today, he is going to make you regret it." Jake's face turned red with rage. "You think your mountain man scares me. I am not afraid of him." "Then you are even stupider than I thought," Tabitha said. She tried to walk past him again, but this time Jake grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. "I am not done talking to you," he snarled. That was when Sam appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. One moment, Tabitha was trapped by Jake's grip, and the next Sam had Jake pressed against the wall of the building, one massive forearm across his throat. "Let me make something very clear to you, Mercer," Sam said, his voice deadly calm. "If you ever touch her again, if you ever speak to her with anything less than respect, I will forget that I am trying to be a civilized man. I will take you up into the mountains and leave you there with nothing but the clothes on your back. Do you understand me?" Jake nodded frantically, his eyes wide with genuine fear. Sam held him there for another moment, then released him with a look of disgust. "Get out of my sight," Sam ordered. Jake stumbled away, nearly falling in the snow in his haste to escape. Sam immediately turned his attention to Tabitha, his expression transforming from fury to concern. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" Tabitha rubbed her arm where Jake had grabbed her, knowing there would be bruises later. "I am fine. He just scared me." Sam's jaw tightened when he saw her rubbing her arm, but he did not comment. Instead, he wrapped his arm around her shoulders and guided her back toward the saloon. "I am sorry I was not there sooner," he said quietly. "I should have walked with you to the store." "You cannot protect me every second of every day," Tabitha pointed out. "I need to be able to take care of myself." "I know," Sam agreed. "But that does not mean I have to like seeing you in danger. I love you, Tabitha. The thought of anything happening to you makes me feel like I cannot breathe." Tabitha leaned into his solid warmth, grateful for his presence. "I stood up to him," she said, a note of pride in her voice. "Before you arrived, I told him exactly what I thought of him. I did not let him make me feel small." Sam stopped walking and turned to face her, his eyes shining with pride and love. "I am so proud of you," he said. "That took real courage." "You taught me that courage," Tabitha said. "You taught me that I do not have to accept the way people treat me, that I am worth more than what others think of me." "You always had that strength inside you," Sam corrected gently. "I just helped you remember it was there." They walked the rest of the way back to the saloon in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. But that evening, after the saloon had closed and they were alone, Sam brought up something that had clearly been on his mind. "I think we should get married before spring," he said. "I do not want to wait months. I want you to be my wife now." Tabitha looked at him in surprise. "But I thought you wanted to rebuild your cabin first, to have a proper home ready for us." "I can build the cabin just as easily as a married man," Sam said. "Better, even, because I will have you beside me, helping and encouraging me. We can stay here through the worst of winter, save our money, and head up to the mountains as soon as the pass is clear enough to travel. We can live in a tent if we have to while we build. I just want us to be officially bound together to make it real." Tabitha's heart swelled with love for this man who was so eager to tie his life to hers. "Are you sure? A tent in the mountains in early spring will be cold and uncomfortable." "I have lived in worse," Sam said with a shrug. "And everything is better when you are with the person you love. Besides, I am good at keeping people warm." The teasing note in his voice made Tabitha blush, but she laughed. "All right. Yes, let us get married as soon as possible. I do not want to wait either." They arranged for the wedding to take place in early January, giving them just a few weeks to prepare. The minister in Buffalo was happy to perform the ceremony, though he made it clear he disapproved of how quickly they were rushing into marriage. Tabitha did not care. She had spent too many years being cautious and careful. For once in her life, she wanted to be impulsive, to leap without looking. Sam used some of his savings to buy Tabitha a dress for the wedding. It was simple but beautiful, made of soft blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes. He also bought her a heavy coat lined with fur, sturdy boots, and warm gloves. "You are spending too much money," Tabitha protested when he presented her with the gifts. "We need to save for the cabin." "I have plenty saved," Sam assured her. "And you need proper clothing for living in the mountains. The winters up there are harsh, and I will not have my wife freezing because I was too cheap to buy her decent gear." "My wife." The words made Tabitha's heart flutter every time Sam said them. She could hardly believe this was real, that in just a few weeks she would be married to this incredible man who had somehow seen through all her defenses to the person she really was. The wedding took place on January 10th, a bright, cold day with fresh snow covering everything in pristine white. They were married in the small church at the edge of town, with a handful of witnesses, including the other saloon workers, and a few of the people Sam had befriended during his time in Buffalo. Tabitha had never felt beautiful before, but when she walked down the aisle and saw the look on Sam's face, she felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. He looked handsome in new clothes he had purchased for the occasion, his long hair neatly combed and his beard trimmed. But it was the expression in his eyes that took her breath away, the pure love and devotion that shone there. The ceremony itself was simple and brief. They exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. Sam's voice was steady and sure when he spoke his vows, but Tabitha's voice shook with emotion. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Sam kissed her gently, sealing their union. Afterward, there was a small celebration at the saloon. Mr. Patterson had grudgingly donated food and drink for the occasion, and someone produced a fiddle so there could be dancing. Sam was not a particularly graceful dancer, but he held Tabitha close and swayed with her to the music, and that was enough. "Are you happy?" he asked, his lips close to her ear. "I did not think I could be this happy," Tabitha admitted. "I am terrified that I will wake up and discover this was all a dream." "It is real," Sam promised. "I am real and this is real, and we have the rest of our lives to be happy together." That night, in the room Sam had been renting at the saloon, they consummated their marriage. Tabitha had been nervous, her past experiences making her wary of physical intimacy. But Sam was patient and gentle, taking his time to show her that intimacy between two people who loved each other was nothing like what she had experienced before. He worshipped her body with his hands and his mouth, asking permission before every new touch, making sure she was comfortable and willing. And when they finally came together, it was beautiful and intense, and nothing like the cold, painful encounters Tabitha had endured in the past. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Tabitha's head resting on Sam's broad chest as he ran his fingers through her hair. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Sam replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You are my whole world, Tabitha Hawthorne." Hearing her new name made Tabitha smile. She was no longer Tabitha Harlow, the frightened, broken woman who believed she did not deserve happiness. She was Tabitha Hawthorne, beloved wife of the best man she had ever known. And for the first time in her entire life, she looked forward to the future with hope instead of dread. The rest of winter passed in a blur of preparation. Sam continued to work odd jobs around Buffalo, saving every penny for supplies they would need in the mountains. Tabitha gave notice to Mr. Patterson and spent her final weeks at the saloon training her replacement. In the evenings, Sam taught Tabitha skills she would need for mountain living. He showed her how to prepare animal hides, how to recognize which plants were edible and which were poisonous, how to read the weather and predict when storms were coming. Tabitha absorbed every lesson eagerly, determined to be a useful partner rather than a burden. They also spent long hours planning their cabin. Sam drew sketches of what he wanted to build, and they discussed every detail from the size of the rooms to where they would position the windows. It would be a simple structure, but it would be theirs, built with their own hands and filled with their love. By late February, the snow had started to melt, and the days were growing noticeably longer. Sam announced that they would leave for the mountains in mid-March, as soon as the mountain passes were clear enough to navigate safely. On their last night in Buffalo, the other saloon workers threw a farewell party for Tabitha. It was a bittersweet evening, saying goodbye to women who had been kind to her, who had shared the difficulties of their profession with understanding and compassion. But Tabitha was ready to leave this life behind, ready to start fresh in a place where her past did not define her. They departed Buffalo on March 15th, their supplies loaded onto a sturdy mule that Sam had purchased. The journey into the mountains took 3 days, following narrow trails that climbed steadily upward through forests of pine and aspen. Tabitha had never been this far from civilization, and she was awed by the raw beauty of the landscape. Sam's destroyed cabin had been located in a high valley, tucked between 2 ridges and fed by a clear mountain stream. When they arrived, Tabitha could see why Sam had chosen this spot. It was isolated but not too remote, with good access to water and game, and the valley provided some protection from the worst of the mountain winds. The remains of the old cabin were still visible, charred timbers and a stone fireplace that had survived the lightning strike. Sam stood looking at the ruins for a long moment, and Tabitha could see the memories playing across his face. "Are you all right?" she asked, touching his arm gently. "Yes," Sam said, shaking off whatever melancholy had gripped him. "I was just thinking about all the time I spent here alone, convinced that was all I deserved. And now I get to rebuild with you, create something new and better. It feels like closing one chapter and starting another." They set up their tent near the stream and spent the first few days clearing away the remains of the old cabin. It was hard, physical work, but Tabitha found satisfaction in the labor. Every charred timber they removed was a piece of Sam's painful past being cleared away to make room for their future. Once the site was clear, they began the process of building the new cabin. Sam had purchased most of the lumber they would need in Buffalo, though they also cut and prepared trees from the surrounding forest. The work was exhausting, and there were days when Tabitha's hands were so covered in blisters that she could barely hold a hammer. But Sam was always there with encouragement and gentle care, wrapping her hands and kissing away her tears of frustration. As spring turned to summer, the cabin slowly took shape. It was larger than Sam's previous home, with 2 rooms instead of 1 and real glass windows that let in the light. Sam was a skilled carpenter, and every joint and corner was fitted with care. Tabitha helped wherever she could, learning as she worked. They fell into a comfortable rhythm of labor and rest. During the day they built, and in the evenings they would sit by their campfire, watching the stars emerge in the vast mountain sky. Sam taught Tabitha to fish in the stream and to identify animal tracks. In return, Tabitha shared stories from the books she had read, bringing literature and poetry to the wilderness. Their love deepened during those months of working side by side. Tabitha learned that Sam snored softly in his sleep, and that he liked his coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Sam learned that Tabitha was ticklish behind her knees, and that she had a beautiful singing voice she only used when she thought no one was listening. By late July, the cabin was complete. It had a solid roof, a large stone fireplace, and a loft for sleeping. Sam had built Tabitha a kitchen with shelves and a work table, and he had carved decorative details into the door frame. It was not grand by any means, but it was home, and they had created it together. On the day they moved out of the tent and into the cabin, Sam carried Tabitha over the threshold, both of them laughing at the ridiculousness and the perfection of the gesture. That night, they christened their new home properly, making love in the loft while rain drummed on the roof above them. "I cannot believe we built this," Tabitha said afterward, snuggled against Sam's warm bulk. "A few months ago I was serving drinks in a saloon, and now I am living in a cabin I helped build with my own hands." "You can do anything you set your mind to," Sam said, and there was such conviction in his voice that Tabitha believed him. "This is just the beginning, Tabitha. We are going to have an amazing life together." Over the following months, they continued to improve their homestead. Sam built a smokehouse for preserving meat, and a small barn for storing supplies and eventually housing livestock. Tabitha planted the garden she had always dreamed of, coaxing vegetables and herbs from the mountain soil. They were not completely isolated. Occasionally, other trappers or hunters would pass through, and Sam and Tabitha would offer hospitality and trade. Through these visitors, they learned that Jake Mercer had left Buffalo after getting into serious trouble involving gambling debts and threats against local merchants. No one seemed to miss him. As autumn painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Tabitha realized she had missed her monthly bleeding twice. She waited another month to be sure, then told Sam the news one evening as they sat before their fireplace. "I think I am with child," she said, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Sam's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His face lit up with joy, and he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Are you certain as I can be without seeing a doctor? My courses have stopped, and I have been feeling ill in the mornings. We will go to Buffalo in the spring so a doctor can confirm it and make sure you and the baby are healthy," Sam said immediately. "But if you are right, if we are really going to have a child, that is the most wonderful news I have ever heard." That night, Sam was especially tender with her, treating her like she was made of spun glass. Tabitha laughed and assured him that she was not going to break, but she loved his protectiveness all the same. The winter was long and cold, but the cabin kept them warm and safe. Sam hunted and trapped while the weather allowed, building up their supply of meat and furs. Tabitha focused on sewing and preparing for the baby. She made tiny clothes from scraps of fabric, her heart swelling with love for the child she had not yet met. On quiet evenings, Sam would rest his head against her growing belly, talking to their unborn baby. He told stories about the mountains, promised to teach their child to hunt and fish and survive in the wilderness. Tabitha would run her fingers through his hair and feel a contentment so profound, it sometimes brought tears to her eyes. She had never believed she deserved happiness, had never thought she would find someone who loved her unconditionally. But Sam had proven her wrong every single day since they met. He had shown her that her past did not define her, that she was worthy of love and joy and all the good things life had to offer. As spring arrived once more, and the snow began to melt, revealing the green underneath, Tabitha stood outside their cabin with her hand resting on her swollen belly. Sam came up behind her, wrapping his strong arms around her and resting his chin on her head. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago. I am thinking about how grateful I am that your cabin burned down, because otherwise we never would have met." Sam chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Leave it to you to find the silver lining in a disaster, but you are right. I lost my home, but I gained everything that matters." "Do you think our baby will be happy here?" Tabitha asked, a hint of worry creeping into her voice. "Growing up so far from civilization, our baby will be loved," Sam said firmly. "They will grow up knowing they are wanted and cherished. They will have the freedom of these mountains, the beauty of this wilderness, and when they are old enough, if they want to experience town life, we will take them. But yes, I think they will be happy. How could they not be when they have you as a mother?" Tabitha turned in his arms and kissed him deeply. "I love you, Samuel Hawthorne. Thank you for never giving up on me, for proving that I deserve happiness." "You do deserve it," Sam said, framing her face with his hands. "You always did. I am just grateful I got to be the one to show you." True to his word, Sam took Tabitha to Buffalo in late April when the trails were fully clear. The doctor confirmed that she was indeed pregnant, and that both she and the baby appeared healthy. He estimated the baby would arrive in late July or early August. They spent a few days in town, purchasing supplies they would need for the birth and visiting with the people they had befriended during their time there. The other saloon workers were thrilled to see Tabitha looking so healthy and happy, and they showered her with gifts for the baby. Mr. Patterson grudgingly admitted that married life seemed to agree with her, though he still mourned the loss of a good worker. "If you ever decide mountain living is not for you, you will always have a job here," he offered. Tabitha thanked him politely, but knew she would never take him up on that offer. Her life was in the mountains now, with Sam and their growing family. The journey back to their cabin took longer than usual, because Sam insisted they travel slowly to avoid tiring Tabitha. But eventually, they crested the final ridge and their valley spread out before them, the cabin looking sturdy and welcoming in the late afternoon sun. "Home," Tabitha said softly, and the word had never meant more. The next few months were spent in anxious preparation. Sam became increasingly protective as Tabitha's belly grew, barely letting her lift anything heavier than a teacup. Tabitha found his hovering both endearing and slightly annoying, but she understood it came from a place of love. In late July, on a hot afternoon when the air was thick and heavy, Tabitha's labor began. Sam, who had faced down bears and hostile men without flinching, went pale with fear. But Tabitha talked him through it, reminding him of everything the doctor had said, and eventually Sam's training and natural competence took over. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. But finally, as the sun set on July 28th, their son was born. He was small but healthy, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that proved he could certainly make his presence known. Sam cut the cord with shaking hands, then wrapped the baby in a soft blanket Tabitha had made. When he placed their son in Tabitha's arms, tears were streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did so well, my love. You were so brave." Tabitha looked down at the tiny face of her son and felt a love so overwhelming it was almost painful. This was her child, hers and Sam's, created from their love and born into a life that would be nothing like the one she had endured. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world. Your papa and I are so happy to meet you." They named him Silas, after Sam's grandfather, who had been the only family member to show him kindness as a child. Silas Hawthorne quickly became the center of their world. Sam proved to be a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor with a crying baby without complaint. He would hold Silas for hours, staring at his tiny features with wonder. Tabitha discovered a fierce protectiveness she had never known she possessed. Every time Silas smiled or reached for her face, she felt her heart expand a little more. She sang to him the songs her mother had sung to her before she died, passing on the few happy memories she had from her childhood. As summer turned to autumn and then to winter, their little family settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sam continued his trapping and hunting, but he never stayed away from the cabin longer than necessary. He could not bear to be separated from Tabitha and Silas for extended periods. On Silas's first birthday, they had a small celebration with a cake Tabitha had baked in the fireplace and gifts Sam had carved from wood. Silas was walking now, toddling around the cabin on unsteady legs and getting into everything he could reach. "Can you believe it has been a year?" Tabitha asked Sam as they watched Silas play with a wooden horse Sam had made him. "Some days it feels like he has always been here, and other days I cannot believe we created this perfect little human," Sam admitted. "But I do know one thing. I have never been happier than I am right now in this moment, with you and our son." Tabitha leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him. "Me neither. Sometimes I think about who I used to be, that woman in Buffalo who thought she did not deserve happiness. She seems like a different person now." "She was a different person," Sam said. "She was someone who had been hurt so badly that she forgot she was allowed to hope. But you are not her anymore. You are Tabitha Hawthorne, my wife, Silas's mother, and the strongest woman I know. You built this life, this happiness. I just helped." "You did more than help," Tabitha corrected. "You saved me, Sam. You saw something in me that I could not see in myself, and you never gave up trying to show me I was wrong about what I deserved." Sam turned to face her fully, his gray-blue eyes serious. "You did not need saving. You needed someone to believe in you, to stand beside you while you saved yourself, and I will always be proud that I got to be that person." They kissed, slow and sweet, while Silas babbled happily in the background. And in that moment, surrounded by love in the home they had built together, Tabitha finally and completely let go of the last remnants of doubt that had haunted her for so long. She did deserve happiness. She deserved this life, this family, this love. And she would spend the rest of her days being grateful for the mountain man who had spent his life proving that truth to her. Years passed in their mountain valley, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Silas grew into a sturdy, curious boy who loved exploring the wilderness with his father. Sam taught him to fish and track animals, to respect nature and understand its rhythms. Tabitha taught him letters and numbers, reading to him from the small collection of books they had accumulated. When Silas was 3, Tabitha became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring she gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, after Tabitha's mother. Sarah was quieter than her brother had been, with Tabitha's eyes and Sam's stubborn determination. Their cabin became filled with the sounds of childhood, laughter and tears, and the constant questions of young minds eager to understand the world. Sam built an addition to accommodate their growing family, and Tabitha's garden expanded year by year, providing fresh vegetables throughout the growing season. They made occasional trips to Buffalo, usually once or twice a year, to trade furs and purchase supplies they could not make themselves. Each time they visited, Tabitha was struck by how different she felt from the woman who had once worked in the saloon. That life seemed like it had belonged to someone else, someone she barely recognized anymore. One autumn day, when Silas was 7 and Sarah was 4, a traveler passed through their valley. He was an older man, a trapper who had worked these mountains for decades. Over supper, he told them stories about the changing world beyond their isolated home. The railroad was expanding, bringing more people west. Towns were growing, becoming more civilized. After the traveler had moved on, Tabitha found herself feeling pensive. "Do you ever regret staying up here?" she asked Sam that night as they lay in bed. "Do you ever wish we had stayed closer to civilization, given the children more opportunities?" Sam was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "I will not lie and say I never think about it. I wonder sometimes if we are being selfish, raising them so far from schools and other children. But then, I see how happy they are, how confident and capable. Silas can track a deer through the forest and start a fire in the rain. Sarah knows the name of every plant in the valley and can tell you which ones are medicine and which ones are poison. They are learning things most children never get the chance to learn." "But what about when they are older?" Tabitha pressed. "What if they want different lives than this? What if they resent us for keeping them isolated?" "Then we will support them in whatever they choose," Sam said firmly. "We will give them the skills and the love they need to make their own way in the world. And we will trust that we have raised them well enough that they will be happy, wherever life takes them." Tabitha nodded, reassured by his words. She knew he was right. They were giving their children something precious, a childhood filled with love and freedom and the beauty of the natural world. Whatever came next, they would face it together as a family. When Silas turned 10, Sam began teaching him more advanced wilderness skills. They would go on hunting trips together, sometimes staying away from the cabin for several days. Tabitha missed them terribly during these absences, but she knew it was important for Silas to learn from his father, to develop the confidence and independence he would need as he grew into a man. Sarah, meanwhile, showed a keen interest in healing. She would follow Tabitha around, asking questions about the medicinal plants in the garden and begging to help when anyone in the family was sick or injured. Tabitha taught her everything she knew, which admittedly was not much, but Sarah absorbed every lesson eagerly. As the children grew older and more independent, Tabitha and Sam found themselves with more time alone together. They would take long walks through the valley, talking about their dreams for the future and reminiscing about their early days together. The physical passion between them had not dimmed with time. If anything, it had deepened, enriched by years of love and trust and shared experiences. "You remember the first time we met?" Tabitha asked one evening as they sat on the porch they had added to the cabin, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold. "I was scrubbing my hands in the creek, trying to wash away guilt that only existed in my mind. I remember thinking you were the most beautiful and the most heartbreaking thing I had ever seen," Sam said. "I remember wanting to know your story, to understand what had put that look in your eyes. And now you know all my stories," Tabitha said with a smile, "all my secrets and all my scars." "And I love every single one of them," Sam replied, pulling her close, "because they are part of what made you the woman you are, the woman I fell in love with." "I love you too," Tabitha said, More now than I did on the day we married. I did not think that was possible, but every year with you has only made my love grow stronger." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell over the valley, the first stars beginning to appear in the vast sky above. Inside the cabin, they could hear Silas and Sarah getting ready for bed, their voices raised in some sibling argument that would be forgotten by morning. "We did good," Sam said quietly. "You and me. We built something real here, something worth having." "We did," Tabitha agreed. "And I am grateful every single day that you refused to let me believe I did not deserve it." As the years continued to pass, their little homestead thrived. Silas grew into a strong, capable young man who was the image of his father in both appearance and temperament. At 16, he was already taller than Sam, with the same powerful build and quiet confidence. He had inherited his mother's gentle heart, though, and Tabitha often found him rescuing injured animals or helping Sarah with her plant gathering. Sarah, at 13, was turning into a beautiful young woman with a gift for healing that went beyond anything Tabitha had taught her. She had an instinctive understanding of how the body worked, of which remedies would be most effective for different ailments. Several times, when trappers or hunters had come through the valley with injuries or illnesses, Sarah had been able to help them when Tabitha's knowledge had reached its limits. One spring morning, when Tabitha was 42 and Sam was 45, they woke to find their children had prepared breakfast and decorated the table with wildflowers. "What is all this?" Tabitha asked, touched by the gesture. "We wanted to do something special," Sarah explained. "To thank you both for everything you have given us." "We know we do not say it enough," Silas added, looking slightly embarrassed but determined. "But we are grateful for this life, for this home. We know you sacrificed to give us this." Tabitha felt tears prickling at her eyes, and she saw that Sam was similarly affected. "You two are the best thing we ever created," Sam said, his voice rough with emotion. "Everything we did because we love you." They shared a family breakfast filled with laughter and love, and Tabitha thought about how far she had come from that woman scrubbing her hands by the creek all those years ago. She had built this life from nothing, had created a family where there had only been loneliness and pain. That afternoon, while Sam and Silas were working on repairing the barn roof, Sarah approached Tabitha in the garden. "Mama, can I ask you something?" she said, her expression serious. "Of course, sweetheart. What is on your mind?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, carefully choosing her words. "A few months ago, when that trapper came through with the broken leg, he told me I should consider becoming a real doctor. He said I had the gift for it. Do you think that is possible? Could someone like me become a doctor?" Tabitha set down her gardening tools and gave her daughter her full attention. "Do you want to be a doctor?" "I think I do," Sarah admitted. "I love helping people and I want to learn more than what I can learn here, but I do not want to leave you and Papa and Silas. This is my home." Tabitha's heart ached with a mixture of pride and sadness. She had known this day would come, when their children would start looking beyond the valley to the wider world, but she had not expected it to hurt quite so much. "If becoming a doctor is what you want, then we will find a way to make it happen," Tabitha said firmly. "We will not hold you back from your dreams, Sarah. Your happiness is more important to us than keeping you close." "But I do not want to leave," Sarah said, and there were tears in her eyes now. "Then we will figure out a compromise," Tabitha soothed. "Perhaps you could go to school for part of the year and come home for the rest, or perhaps we could find a doctor willing to take you on as an apprentice. There are always options, my darling. We just have to be creative." That evening, Tabitha and Sam discussed Sarah's aspirations. It was a difficult conversation, both of them struggling with the reality that their children were growing up and would soon be making their own way in the world. She is so young, Sam said, his voice pained. I am not ready to let her go. Neither am I, Tabitha admitted. But we always said we would support them in whatever they wanted to do. We cannot go back on that now just because it is harder than we thought it would be. Sam sighed heavily. You are right, of course. If Sarah wants to be a doctor, we will help her achieve that goal, even if it means letting her leave the valley. Over the next year, they made inquiries during their trips to Buffalo and learned about a medical school in Denver that accepted a few female students. It would be expensive and require Sarah to be away from home for months at a time, but she could study during the academic year and return to the mountains during the summers. The year Sarah turned 14, they made arrangements for her to begin her studies the following autumn. It gave them time to prepare emotionally and financially, to ensure she would have everything she needed to succeed in this new challenge. When the time came for Sarah to leave, the entire family made the journey to Denver to see her settled. The city was overwhelming after years in the mountains, loud and crowded and full of strangers. But the medical school seemed reputable, and the headmistress assured them that Sarah would be well cared for. Saying goodbye was one of the hardest things Tabitha had ever done. She held her daughter close, breathing in her familiar scent, trying to memorize every detail of this moment. You are going to do amazing things, Tabitha whispered. I am so proud of you, Sarah, so very proud. I love you, Mama, Sarah said through her tears. Thank you for believing in me. Always, Tabitha promised. We will always believe in you. The journey back to their valley was somber, all three of them lost in their own thoughts. But as difficult as it was, Tabitha knew they had made the right choice. Sarah deserved the chance to pursue her dreams, to become the person she was meant to be. Life in the cabin was quieter with only three of them, but they adjusted. Silas threw himself into learning everything he could from Sam, determined to be as skilled a mountain man as his father. And Tabitha focused on her garden and her writing. Over the years, she had begun keeping journals, recording their family's history and her own thoughts about life. She found it therapeutic, a way to process her emotions and preserve their memories. Sarah came home that first summer filled with stories about her studies and the people she had met. She was exhausted but exhilarated, and it was clear she had made the right choice. Over supper, she told them about anatomy lessons and medical procedures, about the other students and the professors who were teaching her. I am one of only 3 women in my program, she said. Some of the male students resent us being there. They think medicine is not an appropriate field for women. What do you think? Sam asked. Sarah grinned, and there was a fierceness in her expression that reminded Tabitha of herself. I think I am going to prove them wrong. I am already near the top of my class, and I intend to stay there. That is my girl, Sam said proudly. Never let anyone tell you what you can or cannot do. The pattern continued for the next 4 years. Sarah would study in Denver during the academic year and return home during the summers. Each time she came back, she had grown a little more confident, a little more worldly, but the core of who she was never changed. She was still their Sarah, kind and curious and determined to use her gifts to help others. Meanwhile, Silas had grown into a man any father would be proud of. At 20, he was a skilled hunter and trapper, but he had also developed a talent for carpentry. He had built furniture for their cabin and had even taken commissions from people in Buffalo who had seen his work. One autumn evening, Silas announced that he had been courting a young woman he had met in Buffalo. Her name was Emma, and she was the daughter of the blacksmith. She was smart and hardworking, and Silas was clearly smitten. I would like to bring her here to meet you both, Silas said nervously. If that is all right. Of course it is all right, Tabitha assured him. We cannot wait to meet her. Emma visited the following month, and Tabitha immediately understood why her son had fallen for her. She was practical and good-humored, not at all put off by the rustic conditions of mountain living. She fit into their family easily, laughing at Sam's jokes and helping Tabitha with the cooking. On her last evening there, Emma and Silas went for a walk. When they returned, Silas was grinning from ear to ear. "Emma has agreed to marry me," he announced. "We are going to build a cabin on the far side of the valley if that is all right with you. I want to stay close, but we will need our own space." Tabitha hugged her son tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I am so happy for you," she said. "Both of you. Welcome to the family, Emma." The wedding took place the following spring, with Sarah home from medical school for the occasion. It was a simple ceremony held in the valley, with Emma's family making the journey from Buffalo for the celebration. Watching her son pledge his life to the woman he loved, Tabitha was struck by the strange beauty of time's passage. It seemed like just yesterday that Silas had been a baby in her arms, and now he was a man starting his own family. "Are you all right?" Sam asked quietly, noticing the tears on her cheeks. "I am perfect," Tabitha assured him. "I am just overwhelmed by how blessed we are." "Look at what we built, Sam. Look at this family, these children who are so full of love and possibility." Sam pulled her close, and they watched their son dance with his new bride. "We did good," he agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." True to his word, Silas built a cabin on the far side of the valley with help from Sam and some of Emma's relatives. It was close enough that the families could easily visit each other, but far enough to provide privacy. Within a year, Emma was pregnant, and Tabitha found herself preparing to become a grandmother. The baby, a girl they named Rose, was born on a sunny day in late summer. Holding her granddaughter for the first time, Tabitha was overwhelmed by the continuation of their family line. This child carried the blood of both her and Sam, a living testament to the love they had built together. "Hello, little Rose," Tabitha whispered, touching the baby's tiny fingers. "You are going to have such a wonderful life. You are going to be so loved." As Rose grew, she was joined by two brothers, making Silas and Emma the parents of three. Sarah finished her medical training and decided to open a practice in Buffalo, where she could serve both the townspeople and the trappers and homesteaders who lived in the surrounding mountains. She visited the valley often, always bringing news of the changing world beyond their isolated home. The years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays, by the changing of seasons and the rhythms of mountain life. Tabitha and Sam grew older, their hair turning silver, their movements slowing. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by decades of shared experiences and unwavering devotion. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised Tabitha by taking her back to the creek where they had first met. It took longer to get there than it used to, their aging bodies not as quick or as strong as they once were. But eventually they stood at the familiar spot, listening to the water flowing over smooth stones. "You remember what I said to you that day?" Sam asked. "You said the water would freeze my hands off if I kept scrubbing them," Tabitha recalled with a smile. "I also thought you were beautiful and heartbroken, and I wanted to know your story," Sam added. "I wanted to help you somehow, though I did not know how at the time." "You did help me," Tabitha said. "You saved my life, Sam, not just by protecting me from Jake or by giving me a home. You saved me by showing me that I was worth saving. You proved every single day that I deserved happiness, even when I could not believe it myself." Sam cupped her face in his hands, just like he had done so many times over the years. His hands were more weathered now, marked by age and hard work, but his touch was still infinitely gentle. "You did not need saving," he said, echoing words he had spoken decades ago. You just needed someone to stand beside you while you saved yourself, and I have been honored to be that person. These 30 years with you have been the greatest gift of my life." They kissed there by the creek, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. And in that moment, Tabitha felt a peace so complete that it seemed to fill her entire being. She had come so far from the broken woman who had believed she deserved nothing but pain and punishment. She had learned that she was strong, that she was worthy of love, that she could create beauty and joy even from the darkest circumstances. And she had learned all of that because a mountain man with gray-blue eyes and a gentle heart had refused to give up on her. As they walked back to their cabin hand in hand, Tabitha looked around at the valley that had been their home for over 3 decades. She saw their cabin, solid and welcoming. She saw the garden where she had coaxed life from the soil. She saw the path that led to Sela's and Emma's home, where their grandchildren were growing up surrounded by love. This was her legacy. Not the darkness of her past, but the light of everything she and Sam had created together. And it was more than she had ever believed possible. That evening, surrounded by their family, with Sela's and Emma and the grandchildren visiting for the anniversary celebration, Tabitha looked around the crowded cabin and felt her heart swell with gratitude. Sarah had come home from Buffalo for the occasion, bringing gifts and stories about her thriving medical practice. As they sat around the fireplace after supper, the grandchildren begged Sam to tell them stories about the old days. He obliged, sharing tales of his years alone in the mountains, of the challenges he and Tabitha had faced building their first cabin, of the blizzard that had nearly trapped them one winter. The children listened with wide eyes, and Tabitha watched her husband's face as he spoke. Even after all these years, she still found him handsome, still felt a flutter in her chest when he smiled at her across a crowded room. "Tell us about how you and Grandma met," little Rose demanded. She was 10 now, a bright, curious child with her grandfather's determination and her grandmother's compassion. Sam and Tabitha exchanged a look, and she nodded, giving him permission to share their story. "Your grandmother was the most stubborn woman I had ever met," Sam began, and Tabitha laughed. She had convinced herself that she did not deserve to be happy, that her life was meant to be hard and joyless. But I could see past all those walls she had built. I could see the real her, strong and brave and beautiful. "What did you do?" Rose asked. "I loved her," Sam said simply. "Every single day I showed her through my words and my actions that she was worthy of love and happiness and all the good things life has to offer. It took time, and there were moments when I thought she might never believe me, but she did eventually. She let me in and we built this life together." "That is the most romantic story ever," Sarah said, wiping tears from her eyes. "It is the truth," Tabitha added. "Your grandfather saved my life in every way that matters. He refused to let me believe the lies I had been told about myself. He spent years proving that I deserved happiness, and he never gave up. That is real love, children, not just saying the words but showing them every single day." As the evening wound down and their family prepared to leave, each person hugged Tabitha and Sam tightly, thanking them for building such a strong foundation for all of them to stand on. After everyone had gone and the cabin was quiet once more, Tabitha and Sam prepared for bed. They moved slowly, their aging bodies requiring more care and patience. But they still slept curled together in the loft they had shared for 3 decades, still found comfort in each other's presence. "I love you," Tabitha whispered into the darkness. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Sam replied, his arms tightening around her. "You made my life worth living, Tabitha. You gave me everything I never knew I needed." They drifted off to sleep like that, two souls so intertwined that they had become one. And Tabitha's last thought before sleep claimed her was one of pure gratitude. She had been given a second chance at life, at happiness, at love. And she had seized that chance with both hands, building something beautiful and lasting. The years continued to be kind to them. Sam remained strong and vital well into his 60s, though he finally had to admit that his trapping days were behind him. He focused instead on carpentry, creating beautiful pieces that Sarah would sell in Buffalo. Tabitha's garden became legendary among the families living in the surrounding valleys, and she spent her days tending her plants and writing in her journals. They watched their grandchildren grow, seeing pieces of themselves reflected in each new generation. Rose showed signs of inheriting Sarah's gift for healing, while her brothers were more like their father, happiest when they were working with their hands or exploring the wilderness. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Sam gifted Tabitha with a rocking chair he had spent months crafting in secret. It was made of beautiful polished wood, with intricate carvings of flowers and vines decorating the arms and backrest. "It is for when we are old and gray and can no longer wander the mountains like we used to," Sam explained. "We can sit together on the porch and watch the sunset." Tabitha ran her fingers over the smooth wood, tears streaming down her face. "It is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, my love." They did spend many evenings in that chair, Tabitha sitting in Sam's lap despite their ages, watching the mountains turn gold in the setting sun. They would talk about their life together, about the choices they had made and the paths they had walked. And always, they marveled at how far they had come from those two broken souls who had met by a creek all those years ago. When Tabitha was 65 and Sam was 68, he woke one morning complaining of pain in his chest. Tabitha immediately sent for Sarah, fear gripping her heart. Sarah arrived within hours and examined her father thoroughly. "His heart is weak," she said quietly after Sam had fallen asleep. "It happens sometimes with age. He needs rest and care." For the first time in their marriage, Sam became the one who needed protection and care. Tabitha devoted herself to nursing him, making sure he took the medicines Sarah prescribed, that he rested and did not overexert himself. She read to him from their favorite books, reminded him of their favorite memories, held his hand through the pain. Sam hated being weak, hated being dependent. But he endured it with as much grace as he could muster, mostly because he knew how much Tabitha needed to care for him. Just as he had spent decades proving she deserved happiness, she now spent her days proving that she would stand by him through anything. "I am sorry," Sam said one evening as they sat together on the porch in the rocking chair he had made. "This is not how I wanted our story to end." "Our story is not ending," Tabitha said firmly. "You are just having a difficult chapter. We will get through it together the way we have gotten through everything else." Sam smiled and kissed her forehead. "I love you so much, more than words can express." "I know," Tabitha said, "and I love you just as much." Sam's health stabilized over the following months, though it was clear he would never fully recover. He tired easily and could no longer do the physical work he loved. But he found new ways to contribute, teaching his grandsons advanced woodworking techniques and sharing stories with anyone who would listen. Tabitha cherished every day they had together, knowing that their time was growing shorter. She made sure to tell him daily how much he meant to her, how grateful she was for every moment they had shared. And Sam did the same, his love for her undimmed by time or illness. They celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary quietly, just the two of them and their immediate family. It was a bittersweet occasion, full of love but tinged with the knowledge that they were in the final chapter of their story together. That night, lying in bed with Tabitha in his arms, Sam spoke the words that had been in his heart since the day they met. "You changed my life, Tabitha Hawthorne. Before you, I was just surviving, just going through the motions. But you gave me a reason to live, to hope, to believe in goodness again. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Tabitha held him close, memorizing the feel of his body against hers, the sound of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "And you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You taught me that I deserved happiness, that my past did not define my future. You loved me when I could not love myself. You saved me, Sam, in every way a person can be saved." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, at peace with whatever the future might bring. They had lived a good life, a full life. They had loved deeply and been loved in return. They had created a family, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And most importantly, they had proven that healing was possible, that broken people could find each other and build something beautiful together. That happiness was not a privilege reserved for the worthy, but a right belonging to everyone brave enough to reach for it. Sam passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, with Tabitha holding his hand. He was 70 years old, and he had lived every day of his life with purpose and love. Tabitha mourned him deeply, feeling like half of her soul had been torn away. But she did not regret a single moment they had shared. She lived for another 8 years after Sam's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She continued to tend her garden and write in her journals, preserving their family's history for future generations. And on quiet evenings, she would sit in the rocking chair Sam had made and talk to him as if he were still there beside her. When Tabitha finally passed away at the age of 75, she was laid to rest next to Sam in a quiet spot overlooking their valley. Their children and grandchildren gathered to say goodbye, sharing stories about the remarkable couple who had built a life from nothing but love and determination. Sarah, now a renowned doctor with a thriving practice, spoke at her mother's funeral. "My mother used to say that she did not deserve happiness," Sarah told the gathered mourners, "that she had done things in her past that made her unworthy of love and joy. But my father saw the truth that she could not see. He spent his life proving to her that she deserved everything good the world had to offer, and eventually she believed him. She let herself be happy, and in doing so, she gave all of us the gift of her love and her strength. She taught us that our past does not define us, that we can always choose to build something better. That is her legacy, and it will live on through all of us." As the sun set over the mountains that had been their home for so many years, Tabitha's family said their final goodbyes. But they did not mourn for long, because they knew that Sam and Tabitha were together again, reunited in whatever came after this life. And in the valley they had loved so much, their story lived on, in the cabin that still stood strong after all these years, in the garden that continued to bloom each spring, in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their legacy forward into the future. Tabitha had never believed she deserved happiness, but Sam Hawthorne had spent his life proving that she did. And together, they had created something more beautiful and lasting than either of them could have imagined. A love that transcended time, a family that would endure for generations, and a story that would be told and retold as proof that healing was possible, that love could conquer even the deepest wounds, and that happiness was always within reach for those brave enough to believe they deserved it.